right, good evening, everybody. We're going to get started. So welcome and thank you for attending the Breaking the Barriers Interfaith panel discussion brought to you by the University Health Center Student Advisory Council, or Committee. We call them SHAC at the Health Center. As a director of outreach at CAPS, I was really excited when SHAC presented this idea, addressing very real stressors in our community when it comes to religious and spiritual differences. It really aligned with CAP's mission and the Health Center's mission in terms of leading the charge and bridging the gap between our differences. One of the things I want to stop and do first is acknowledge Dr. Lauren Pucci, one of our psychologists at CAPS, for her invaluable efforts with her contributions to this effort. In addition to students presenting with real concerns at CAPS, we really strive to honor cultural and religious differences in the therapy that we provide. So I couldn't be more excited to participate in this event and starting that conversation. So please let me introduce you to our SHAC hosts, Hannah and Wyanor. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm Hannah, and this is, right there.
My name is Wyanor.
We're a part of the Student Health Advisory Committee that Jennifer was talking about. We meet every month. We talk amongst ourselves about what's concerning health and the student body and how we can make everyone feel safe and included, especially at the health center, what we can do to facilitate that relationship between the student body and the health center. So, this past fall semester, we had a SHAC member, tell us about some stressors that was going on in his community and his faith, and we were like, whoa, that's serious. Like, we want everyone, especially at UGA, to feel safe and comfortable and respected for their beliefs. So we're here tonight to kind of start that conversation. We said, we sat there, we talked amongst ourselves, we realized there's 5 different beliefs just in SHAC. So we're like, let's reach across, from the health center, from CAPS, and let's start it with UGA. Why does it just have to be SHAC? Let's include everyone here at UGA. Let's have everyone feel safe, respected. Let's inform everyone of the different beliefs we have here, the diversity we have right here on campus in Athens. Let's make everyone comfortable, and if one SHAC member but 5 SHAC members are experiencing this is something that we need to set up an event and get it going. So here's Wyanor to tell you, what we're looking forward to do with this event.
So hey everyone, just like Hannah said, we're really happy that y'all came out, and just to outline it for y'all, some of our goals for this event are really to increase the awareness and the acceptance and inclusivity of all people from various faith and traditions, because we really feel like as a big family at UGA, we really need to stick up for each other and have each other's backs. So without further ado, we're going to introduce Jessie McClellan from WUGA.FM, and you may know her from the morning edition.
Good evening, everyone. I'm honored to be a part of this event. I really appreciate the opportunity to learn from our panelists this evening. Before we introduce our panelists, I want to provide some ground rules for the audience and the panelists. They are listed here. Respect is expected. This is a safe space, and no one should feel threatened. All are welcome. I'll be asking questions that have been compiled based on a survey to students across campus. We will not be taking questions from the audience. Please feel free to join us at the post-reception should you have any questions of the panelists or our UGA campus partners. So without further ado, let's introduce our panelists for this evening. The first panelist is John David Adams, and he'll be speaking about Christianity. Come on out. And then we have Samira Parsa, and she'll be speaking about the Baha'i faith. Sarah Atma, Islam. Wyanor Singh, Sikhism. And then Scott Eisenberg, Judaism. Arjun Bhatt, Hinduism. And Marquez Smith, Atheism. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the questions for this evening. The first question that was posed by the audience members was, what do your followers believe? And I'm going to give all of our panelists the opportunity to answer this question. And we'll just go ahead and start. John David, do you want to go ahead and get us started since you're first?
So once again, I'm just here to represent Christianity. And what we believe is that in the beginning, God created everything. So that would be heaven, earth, all things that dwell within it. And then including us. And when he made us in his image, but not physically. So we may not necessarily look like God, but spiritually. So part of God potentially dwells in us. And so when he made us, there were two, Adam and Eve, of course, and they failed at being perfect. And that is why we all fail at being perfect. And because we fell at being perfect, that is why God came to earth in the form of a human as Jesus Christ. And when he died for our sins, that is the start of a new covenant that opened up the ability for us to have direct communication with God. And that's basically what we believe.
Thank you. Samira?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Samira, and I'm a Baha'i. And with the Baha'i faith, we were founded in 1844 in what was then Persia. And kind of the over-encompassing theme of the Baha'i faith is kind of the oneness of humanity and the oneness of one God. We believe that all religions come from one God, and our main tenets really focus around the equality of humans and the innate nobility that all people have. So with that, we believe in the elimination of all prejudice, so the equality of races, the equality of men and women, harmony between science and religion. We also believe in something called progressive revelation, which is the idea that we call them messengers of God. So Jesus, Muhammad, Abraham, Baha'u'llah with the Baha'i faith, all come from one source, which is God. And we believe that all the spiritual teachings of these manifestations, these messengers of God, are the same. But the reason that sometimes the social teachings shift is because when a new messenger is here, they're here for the time that we need them. And so the messages change based on the times, which is why some social teachings between religions may differ as the years go on. So within the Baha'i faith, our core founding is based on unity and harmony of people and the oneness of God and all religions.
Thank you. Sarah?
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a Muslim. And so in our religion, we believe in 5 pillars, and those basically kind of just guide you through how you're supposed to live your life. The first being the Shahada, which is what you would take when you become Muslim. Basically, it's just a proclamation of faith saying that you believe that there is one God and he has no partners, and that Muhammad is his last messenger. And all the other people, Jesus, which we call Isa, Harun, Aaron, all of these people are also messengers. And Muhammad is just his last one who gave us the Quran. And so that is the first pillar. The second is prayer, which we call salat, which we do 5 times a day. That is basically our communication with God. And so we believe that that's our way of actually speaking to him and having some sort of structured communication with him. All of our teachings come from either the Quran or the Hadith, which are the teachings of the time during the Prophet that he was here, Muhammad. But the Quran is supposed to be for all people, regardless of whether you're around during the time of the Prophet or not. And if there's something that you don't particularly see in the Quran is when you would look into Hadith and you would figure out what Islam's stance on that is. So that's just a quick overview.
Thank you, Sarah. Wainur?
Hi, everyone. I'm representing Sikhism. Sikhism started in 1469 in the modern-day Punjab region of India and Pakistan. Sikhs believe in religious plurality, justice for all, and some of our core beliefs are undying devotion to the divine, hard work, and service to humanity. We believe in the teachings of 11 gurus. Gurus can be translated as emperor prophets. The first 10 were human, and then our last guru, the 11th guru, is our scripture. So it's a compilation of the writings of all our previous gurus, and in that sense, we consider it our 11th and eternal guru. I think that should be good.
Thank you, Wynor. Scott.
So I represent Judaism, which is a monotheistic religion, very similar, although there are differences, but very similar to Christianity and Islam. So we believe that there is one God and one God only, who is the creator and ruler of the universe. And there's kind of one book called the Tanakh, which includes 3 different books in it. So the Torah, which is the Old Testament. Then there's the Nevi'im, which is the prophets, and the Ketuvim, which is kind of the writings that analyze the Torah. And basically, the Torah encompasses all of the laws. There's 613 to be exact. A lot of them are pretty antiquated, but basically there are 3 sectors, not necessarily sectors, but depending upon how religiously you follow those laws. So the Orthodox tend to believe that those laws still exist today and that you have to follow them as pretty much as well as possible. And there's conservative, which believes that a lot of those laws are still in place today, but a lot of them are outdated and can be changed. And then the Reform don't really believe or follow any of those laws. And the part about Judaism is they're all 3 equally Jewish. And then you can be still atheist and be Jewish, so you don't have to necessarily believe in any of it and still be Jewish. It's interesting in that way, in that it's more of a culture and a religion than it is a religion. So.
Thank you. Arjun.
Hi everyone, my name is Arjun and I'm representing Hinduism. Hinduism is a little bit different than the other religions in the way we define God. We define God in 3 primary dimensions. The first one is called Sat. Sat means reality. It's just nature around us and the ecosystem and just the existence of living things. The second dimension is Chit. Chit is awareness. Basically, it's the universal consciousness. It's saying that, there's no way that life can be this beautiful without some external universal force. And the last one is Anand, which is the equilibrium between the previous 2 forces, and basically translates into bliss. So these 3 ideas, known as Sat Chit Ananda, are actually personified through multiple different entities, different beings. And there's 5 main beings within Hinduism, or 5 main categories of gods that you can worship, and they all each encapsulate one particular characteristic or quality that you would want to continue pursuing in life. That being said, the whole purpose of life is to try to connect with these 3 qualities, and there's 4 main purposes as outlined through the scriptures. And the first one is known as kama, which basically means trying to satisfy your wants and desires in a sustainable way. Second one is artha, which is being able to care for yourself and sustain and take care of the people around you. Also, it can be translated into creation of resources or creation of wealth. And the third one is known as dharma, which is your duty within society and fulfilling and maintaining proper social order. And the last one is moksha, which is trying to come out of this cycle of materialism and the entire cycle of birth and rebirth. That being said, all of these actions and all of these ideas are encapsulated with one idea, which is probably the most important idea within Hinduism, and that's known as a law of karma. And karma basically means, you do good, you be good, and you'll receive good. And yeah.
Thank you. And finally, Marquez.
I'm Marquez, and I'm representing atheism. And so I guess I would say atheism is like the belief in the disbelief of a god or many gods, but not necessarily like the lack of spirituality or a belief in cosmic forces or karma or something like that. So I think it's something that has to do more so with not believing in a heavenly figure than it does in not believing in something spiritual. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay, now that all of our panelists have had the opportunity to speak, I'd like to open up the floor to several other questions, and feel free to speak, not necessarily in the line. You can speak when you feel compelled to. The next question that we have is, how do you practice on campus? Scott, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
So on campus, there are 2 main UGA-oriented, at least, Jewish organizations. There's Hillel, which is more conservative reformed, and then Chabad is Orthodox. And so every Friday night and Saturday day, there's a Jewish holiday. It's called Shabbat. It's the day of rest. So God, for 6 days, worked on creating the world, and the seventh day he rested. And so if you were an Orthodox or highly conservative Jew, you would practice Shabbat every Friday night and Saturday, which you do nothing but pray. I do not do that every Friday or Saturday, but I do go from time to time, and you go to services there, I'd say like once every month or two. And then the high holidays are Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I go back to Atlanta and go to temple with my family for those holidays. And that's it.
So there's not a lot of Sikhs on campus, but when we do get together, we do really enjoy our time. We have a Sikh student association that was pretty recently formed, and we really work together to achieve our goals. Some of our advisors and members have been really generous to allow us to convene at their house and pray and do celebrations. In Sikhism, there isn't really a holy day. Every day is considered the right time to start doing something. So we're reminded to pray and consider the divine at all times of life. And so we get together during holidays or just do informal gatherings at each other's places and just get together and do that. Yeah.
Okay. So we have a Muslim student association on our campus. We have a decent amount of members here. And so one of the things I had mentioned earlier in our belief system is that we believe in praying 5 times a day. And so that can be kind of difficult for some people, like when they have class or whatever. And so one way that we can practice that easily is we have a prayer room. It's a very small room in Tate, between Old and New Tate. Anyone's welcome to go there. It's just brought by the Muslim Student Association, but it's open for anyone. I've seen Christians go in there and read Bible or whatever, but that's one of the ways that we will go and practice. And then on Friday, that's considered our holy day. A lot of people will go to the mosque to pray what we call Jummah prayer, which is basically just like they'll have a khutbah, which I guess you could translate to a sermon. And then after that, we all pray together. It's a very short, quick prayer. And then afterwards, we do dua, which is probably what most people would consider like a less structured prayer, where we just pray for those in need, pray for our health, pray for our families, pray for peace in the world. And so those are we have that available upstairs in Tate for students who are Muslim or non-Muslim to come and attend, and that's every Friday. And then for people who can't attend or have class at that time, there's actually a mosque very close to campus, Al-Huda, and so a lot of people will go and pray there if they have a car, if it aligns better with their schedule. And then another practice that we have is a lot of us will fast not just in Ramadan, and that's kind of just either like to make up days that you couldn't fast during Ramadan, or if you're doing extra fasting or for whatever reason. And so on campus, sometimes we'll have like iftar, which is when you would break your fast. And so we kind of do that together. It kind of instills a sense of community for all of us when we break our fast together and we pray together. And those are the biggest ways, I guess, that we practice on campus. But any sort of interaction where we have like halakas on Thursdays, those are basically just like lessons where people can come. We might have like speakers come, and they'll just give us any sort of perspective that they're qualified to talk about that relates to Islam. And so we'll do that usually in like MLC or North Campus. So there's a lot of different ways that we can practice. It just depends on what exactly you're trying to practice. But yeah.
So something that's kind of interesting and different about the Baha'i faith is that we don't have clergy members, we don't have priests, we don't have kind of like a council of people who is meant to like give sermons or really lead what like we're supposed to talk about that day, because in the Baha'i faith, we believe in the notion of personal investigation of the truth. And personal investigation of the truth is basically the idea that it's kind of your responsibility to read the writings yourself and read kind of the words of Baha'u'llah yourself so that you're really learning and growing spiritually. And so with that kind of mindset, our Baha'i Student Association, we meet every Monday, and our lessons are very much based around kind of current events. So we talk about things as far as, like spiritual growth or happiness, to politics, to history, to life after death. And usually we'll have kind of one member facilitate the discussion, and they'll come and they'll have kind of talking points and writings from the faith, and then we'll lead into discussions with each other afterwards, and we'll just have a dialogue with each other. So that's kind of how our meetings on campus go, but as far as the community goes, it's very much kind of like a home environment. So we have these books called Ruhi books, and there's about 10 of them right now. And the Ruhi Institute is kind of a set of curriculum that goes through different aspects of the faith. So every once in a while, I would say once a week, we meet with a huge group of people, and we do a study session with the Ruhi books together. And then additionally, once a month, we have a brunch and devotional series that everyone's invited to. So our first one was called Bagels and Baha'u'llah. We've had eggs and exaltations. We've had donuts and devotions. The name changes as it goes on. So we have that once a month for everyone to come to. So a lot of the stuff we do is not only based around kind of like the Baha'i teachings, but it's also based around interfaith and bringing people together. So we do focus a lot on kind of learning from other people and bringing a lot of people together too at the same time through the community and through UGA.
A big part of being Christian is coming together with other Christians, kind of as a meeting of the body of Christ. And there are very many different Christian organizations on campus that you can get involved in, and they meet on various nights of the week. Usually they consist of like a message, and worship most exclusively. And then on Sundays would also be another very important day. Less so with the college community, but just the Athens community as a whole. And with practicing Christianity, there's a really important aspect of serving, not just the community, but like each other as well. And an important aspect of that for me is music. So I participate in music on those days, and it's just a way to serve my God and my friends and anyone else that might be around.
Thank you. We missed two down at the end. Would you guys like to chime in?
As an atheist, we don't really have any holy days. And I don't think there's an organization on campus, not that I've seen since I've gone to some of the club things, but I know there used to be one, the UGA Atheists, but I think they've disbanded. But yeah, so that's about it. There's nothing that I would say I would do to serve atheism on campus, except I guess like go to class. Yeah.
So as a Hindu, there isn't a Hindu organization on campus, and there isn't a temple nearby, but normally when I'm back home, I usually visit temple either on my own or with my family. Here on campus, I think the closest Hindu organization is the Indian Cultural Exchange, and they actually celebrate all holidays, not just from Hinduism, but from other faiths as well. So every fall semester, we have Garba, which is actually the folk dance that we celebrate during Navratri. It's one of the major Indian holidays. And then so we celebrate a lot of different holidays like that. Also, another way that I practice Hinduism is through my career choice. Hindus believe that every living being has an aspect of God in them. And for me, being vegetarian, by being vegetarian, I'm able to respect the life in every other creature. And also, pursuing a career in healthcare, I actually want to help heal others because I really want to help others, bring out the best in other people and help save, that one part of God that resides within them. And yeah.
Our next question is, what is your favorite holiday or celebrations and why? I'd like to start this with Samira. She was just telling me about an upcoming celebration with the Baha'i faith.
Cool, yeah. So Right now, Baha'is are actually in the middle of a 19-day fast. So starting usually March 1st or 2nd, depending on how the sun is that year, we have a 19-day fast from sunrise to sunset. And this is basically just a time to like spiritually reflect and kind of cleanse yourself. And then after these 19 days, it leads to March 21st, which is this Thursday, which is not only kind of the Persian New Year and the Baha'i New Year, but it is also the spring equinox. So Baha'is end their fasting on what we call Nowruz, which is Persian or Farsi for New Day. And since it is the start of spring, it not only symbolizes like the celebration of, you know, being able to break your fast and have a big dinner and have all these celebrations, but it also represents metaphorically kind of spiritual rebirth and physical rebirth. So Nowruz for the Baha'i faith, it is basically like our Christmas. So a lot of people ask us like, do you celebrate Christmas or what do you celebrate? And the answer is no, we don't celebrate Christmas, but we do celebrate Nowruz. So we have presents, like growing up, instead of a tree, we'd have like our table. So you have a half scene, which is a table of 7 like specific things. And then under the half scene, we have all our presents. So it is a really fun celebration. And then the Baha'i faith, ending the fast and having Nowruz on the last day of the 19 days is kind of another reminder about kind of the oneness of all humans, and also kind of the fact that there is one God and all religions come from this one God. And it's just kind of a reminder to reflect on, you know, your spiritual growth as well as the oneness of humanity and of all peoples. So I love Nowruz. I'm super stoked about it, and I'm really excited for Thursday, for sure.
So in Islam, our major holiday is called Eid, and we actually have 2 of them. One is similar to what Samira was talking about, where we actually fast for 30 days in the month of Ramadan. You might have heard of it. But essentially, that's kind of a spiritual and physical fast where you're focusing on kind of like, without sounding scary, a Muslim training camp sort of thing in your head, where you're just focusing on what aspects am I lacking in Islamically and what can I improve upon so that I can become closer to God, whether that's through like actual spiritual reading of Quran or actually helping people or doing something that involves other people, whether it's going to the mosque or that sort of thing. And so after those 30 days of fasting, we celebrate the first Eid, which is at like the very next day. And so a lot of people will go to the masjid, or on campus we do an Eid banquet here, or you can go to the mosque that's here close to campus as well. But that's usually the bigger Eid because a lot of people have just fasted for 30 days. They're very excited for it. They can eat during the day, that sort of thing. And then the second Eid is about 2 months later according to Islamic calendar, and that's the one that marks the end of the pilgrimage, where a lot of Muslims will go to Mecca in Saudi Arabia, and so they'll perform pilgrimage there called Hajj. And that's usually like a 2-week process, and then after they come back, everyone celebrates, and it's something that's mandated on Muslims for at least once in your lifetime to complete if you're financially able to do so. And there's a lot of programs where you can go and people actually help you if you're not financially able to do so, but it's considered like a very important aspect of Islam, and it's actually the 5th pillar of Islam is to make this pilgrimage.
Have you ever been?
No, I haven't. I'm in school.
So, Sikhs celebrate, other than the births and deaths of our gurus, we celebrate 2 other major festivals, Diwali and Vaisakhi. I really can't decide which one's my favorite because there's really good food at both of them. So I'll just tell you both of them. Diwali, you've probably heard of it. It's a pretty widespread cultural celebration. It's celebrated by 4 different faith traditions. Sikhism is just one of them. And Sikhs mainly celebrate it for the release of one of our gurus from a Mughal emperor. Mughals were the Mughal Empire ruled India at one point, and so it celebrates the release of one of our gurus, the 6th guru from the Mughal emperor, and his return to our holy city, Amritsar, which is equivalent to Vatican or Mecca for various traditions. And it also celebrates the triumph of the just over the evil. And so, everyone gets together and there's like all these lights, and it's basically the Festival of Lights. It's our version, it's the brown Christmas, And there's really good food. People dance, and they also sing and pray, and it's just to mark, like I said, the victory of the good over the evil in classical terms. And the second one, Vaisakhi, is typically associated with the harvest festival in the Punjab region. Punjab is the breadbasket of the Indian subcontinent, so it's known for agriculture, and that's when the harvest season begins. It also marks the formalization of the Sikh religion, and that's the day it became distinct from the other faiths in India, such as Islam and Hinduism and Buddhism. And so, like I said, I like both of them. But you should definitely check out, we're celebrating, the Sikh Student Association is celebrating Vaisakhi soon, in about a month, so you should definitely come and check that out.
I'll speak on, it's not one of our main holidays, but Purim, which is essentially Carnival or Mardi Gras for the Jewish religion. The backstory is pretty interesting. So it starts with King Ahasuerus in Persia, who is thought to be Xerxes the First. Pretty lenient guy for Judaism, which was awesome until he appointed Haman, who was very anti-Jew, would not let any Jews in all of Persia practice their religion. And actually the word Purim means lottery, because he picked a lottery to exterminate all the Jews. It just so happens that King Ahasuerus' wife lied to him. He killed her, which is sad. And then he basically held a contest for all of Persia for a new wife. And he ended up picking Esther, who was secretly a Jew. And basically it's a story of how Esther and her uncle Mordecai saved all the Jews and killed Haman. And that's what we celebrate. So, yeah.
So growing up, my mom always used to say that there's more Hindu holidays than there's days in the year. There's probably 3 or 4 that are happening right now that we don't even know about. But there's just so many different celebrations. But perhaps the most important one to me personally is Holi. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. We have a Holi celebration on campus that happens every year. But basically the story behind Holi, it's actually a very long and complicated one. I'm not going to go into it, but the main message is the triumph of good over evil, and everyone is celebrating the return of a very, very important figure within Hinduism. His name is Ram, and also it's also connected to a different story, which is, again, I'm not going to go into it, but Holi is basically the celebration with colors, and I absolutely love it right now, because when I lived in India, it was just a time where, regardless of my friends or not friends or enemies, whatever, like everyone came together and we were just like covering each other in color and like having a good old time, and it was awesome. And coming here and being able to celebrate that again is truly something that's really personal to me and something I enjoy, and I'm really looking forward to it. The actual Holi is happening on Thursday, so this Thursday it's happening, and then this weekend there's a lot of Holi celebrations, so definitely try to go to one if you can.
So there's no official holiday for atheism, but I like Martin Luther King Jr. Day a lot. And I guess if you don't think about, which is hard to do, the history behind it, Thanksgiving, because it is, I guess, a time for me to think about what I'm thankful for, and in terms of a non-religious sense. So yeah.
Go ahead, John David.
I think as a Christian, it'd be really easy to get up here and talk about Christmas, so I'll spare you that. But one of my favorite things that we do, kind of as a celebration, would be communion. And maybe celebration is a bit of a stretch, because it is something that we do in remembrance of the sacrifice that Jesus made. The day before he was turned over, he had a Last Supper with his closest followers, and he broke bread with them and drank wine with them, and that is something that we do every Sunday in remembrance of the sacrifice that he made, and that's one of my favorite things that we do.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. And this is, what is something that you would like others to know about your belief? I'm going to start this one with Marquez, since I feel like he may have more to say about this particular topic.
Yeah, so I guess a big misconception, I guess, about atheists and atheism is that they're cynical about life, or they're cynical about religion, or that they hate religion, or they disrespect it. I was personally raised as a Christian, and actually through my dad, he was in the military, we traveled a lot. And so I've actually lived outside the country and lived in different areas actually inside the country, like Alaska, where I was exposed to different religious influences and like different types of spiritualities and like beliefs in different forces and things like that. And I think a lot of the teachings that come out of different religions are very beneficial to people and definitely have a positive effect in people's lives. I mean, since I was raised as a Christian, there's a lot of things that you learn there that I still apply in my life, even though I don't necessarily believe in God. So I think that's a big thing, a big misconception about atheists, is that they're cynical or they don't respect other people's beliefs and the differences that come within those as well.
One thing that I guess like sometimes people misinterpret about Hinduism is that Hinduism has millions and millions of gods, and that is actually not true. When someone, when I guess Westerners were translating Hindu scriptures, I think they might have accidentally made a mistake in transcribing, but there's actually 5 main types of gods that we believe in, and in each of those gods are actually personifications and symbolizations of the 3 main ideas that I mentioned earlier, Sat, Chit, Ananda. And that's like one big thing that I feel like people misinterpret. Another thing that people often misinterpret is the law of karma. Everyone believes, right now, the common saying is that what goes around comes around. That's not necessarily true. In fact, in one of the most important works of Hinduism, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, who is actually who's considered a reincarnation of Vishnu, who's one of our major gods, says that no matter how much good you do, the result is always going to be random, So do good for the sake of doing good. Don't do good and expect a result. Just do good because it's the right thing to do. And that's something that sometimes people often misinterpret. It's something I've misinterpreted almost my entire life until about a year ago when I found this out. I always expected a good result when I worked hard and when I did something, something that was right. But then I realized that you should do that because it's just the right thing to do.
A similar ideology in Judaism to that, and that's like doing good now is much better than worrying about the afterlife. So that's pretty interesting. Another thing that's interesting is that in Judaism, we don't believe in trying to convert others to be Jewish. So we think that it's called the 7 laws of Noah. And basically, if you follow those laws and you're not Jewish, then we think that you'll be completely fine in the afterlife. And they're pretty reasonable. It's don't disrespect our God, don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't eat a live animal, and I forget the last one, but it's probably something bad that you wouldn't do. So that's interesting. I wanted to say one other thing. I'll think about it later.
So I'd say similar to Judaism, six believe in religious plurality. It doesn't matter really what faith or what religion you believe in, even if you don't have a religion. We accept you, we love you, and we want to be friends with you. A lot of people see 6, they see me, and they see a guy with a turban on his head. And some women wear turbans too, not all, but they see someone with a turban and a beard, and they get scared, especially in America. We all know why. And I would just encourage all of you to just go up to them and just talk to them, ask them questions, probe them with questions. If anything, ask them a question about anything, about why they wear a turban or anything you're curious about, because I feel like a lot of people I talk to are scared of asking me questions, And I love talking. I'm a people person, if you don't know me. And there's nothing more that Six would want than to talk to you and show you what we're about and what we believe in, and how even if we look different from you, it doesn't mean that we don't believe in the same things, and how we just want to live with everyone in harmony. A lot of Six, we're proud to be Americans. We proudly serve in the military, the government. We contribute to all aspects of life here. Like I said, we're few in number compared to the others, but we definitely want to leave our mark, and we just want you to know that we're here and that we're here for y'all. We're here to serve y'all and help make your life better.
So this is a little bit more difficult just because there's a lot of misconceptions about Islam, so choosing one was a little bit more difficult, but I think the one that I'm definitely the most grateful for is the equality that Islam ensures every single person, regardless of race, religion, or not, well, religion as well, but regardless of race, gender, age, that sort of thing. And so, especially as a female, I definitely appreciate that Islam raises the status of women, especially in the context that Islam was brought to the world in. There was a lot of sexism going on. There was a lot of bearing of female babies because people just thought like having a female in your family was the worst thing you could do financially for yourself. And so that's definitely something I'm grateful for, the fact that regardless of what race you are, God doesn't look at what you have in terms of what your identity is. It's just about your actions. For example, like one of the most noble people in Islam is someone who used to be a slave because he was black during the time. His name was Bilal, and he was actually given the opportunity to give the first call to prayer in Islam. And so a lot of people will name their children Bilal if you ever have met a Muslim person named Bilal. And so Islam really just focuses a lot on equality, on people. Like, that is something that's a God-given right to everyone, and the only thing that distinguishes people in the eyes of God is your actions. So how righteous you are, what good deeds you do, how much you're striving for the sake of God and for bettering the health of others. But aside from age, financial status, there's no way to buy your way into heaven, that sort of thing. No race gets into heaven first. It's all just about equality of people.
So in regards to the afterlife, Baha'is don't really believe in a physical heaven or a physical hell. The way that we kind of think of the afterlife is we use the metaphor of the baby in the womb. So when you think of a baby in the womb, you think of, this piece of life that's gaining like nourishment, and they're growing their fingers and their toes, and they're gaining the ability to see and hear for when they are brought to this life that we're in right now. So we kind of see right now as us in this spiritual womb, where we're kind of working on ourselves to grow spiritually and mentally. And so we believe that the afterlife is just a continual progression of the spirituality and of spiritual growth. So we don't have like a physical hell that you go to if you're bad. To us, for lack of a better word, hell is really just being far away from God when you do die. But in addition to, kind of stuff with the afterlife, I think one of my favorite parts about the Baha'i faith, and something that's brought me personally a lot of joy and a lot of peace, is the fact that because we are a religion of unity and peace, Baha'is are not supposed to engage in politics. So politics, I'm sure most people here can agree, is kind of disunifying. Inherently, people don't usually come together because of their, political beliefs. And so just because of that case, Baha'is are not supposed to be part of a political party. We're not supposed to campaign for a certain political party. We're not supposed to make any outward Facebook posts or untoward things about a political party. Instead, we're encouraged to vote, and we're encouraged to get involved in human rights. So I mentioned earlier that in the Baha'i faith, we believe in the equality of men and women. It is super, super important that men and women are seen as equal. We think of it as two wings of a dove. You can't fly if you don't have one of your wings. And And so we really try to get engaged in kind of these civic things, like elimination of prejudice, equality of races. So I think that's something that's brought me a lot of personal joy and peace as a Baha'i, for sure. And, you know, the idea that I won't go to hell if I make a mistake is also really good to know.
I think a common misconception about Christianity is that looking from the outside, people may think, oh, Christians go to church because they think they're perfect. And maybe that's the case for a less mature Christian, but the further you get in and the more you know, being Christian is the open admittance that you aren't perfect and that you need an external God to come and make you and complete you and help you be who you need to be to complete his plan. And a part of that is when we are trying to complete his plan, that's obviously works, but the works that we do on earth aren't what get us into heaven. It's our faith in God alone. That's the only thing that matters, which is comforting because you kind of get your outcome before you perform. And I think that's something that's very unique about Christianity.
So our next question, I'd like to direct toward Wynor. And I feel like this is a question for him because, and for all of the panelists, but because of his personal experience kind of brought us all here together this evening. And so what are some current personal experiences in the community that you would like to share?
Okay.
Not to put you on the spot.
I haven't had any negative experiences at UGA, any notable negative experiences. You know, growing up as a physical and visible minority in Southeast America, especially post 9/11, wearing a turban on your head isn't really easy as a kid. You know, you always want to fit in. But as I grew older, you know, and I feel like it's that way for everyone. It's easier to be apart from the group than it is to be in the group as you get older. And so when I came to UGA, I found more people who, you know, were part of the out group, and I found people who were just looking for others who understood them, and I got that here. And so I haven't had any negative experiences here, but like growing up, you know, I've been bullied, I've been name called, I've been verbally and physically assaulted, but that's all the past. You know, I'm here now, and we're all one big family.
I guess I have a sort of similar experience just because sometimes people can ascribe Islam to a race or a certain appearance, especially with wearing hijab. It makes you a notable target for people, but I personally haven't had too much of an issue. I actually wanted to say that UGA has done a pretty decent job of being inclusive, especially, for example, yesterday we had a vigil for the 51 Muslims who were attacked in New Zealand last Friday, and I really saw how much love this community has in coming together and showing support for a group of people who do not really usually hear a lot of support from people who aren't already in their community. And so, like Wynor said, sometimes, you know, people will bully you, but it kind of just gives you a thicker skin. And especially before I wore hijab, I kind of looked a little bit more like white passing, I guess. So people wouldn't even know I was Muslim. And that was something I had to think about before I started wearing hijab was, will I be able to tolerate people being, you know, rude or nasty or whatever? And I kind of just came to the conclusion that I didn't really care as much as long as it wasn't, you know, going to cause anything too serious like what had happened on Friday. But I do think that when we come together and we show our support and our love for one another like we did last night or like people have been doing the past weekend, we really show that, you know, regardless of what your race is, your religion is, we're all human at the end of the day, and that's what we need to focus on is, you know, unifying ourselves and not looking for differences between people that can drive us apart. It's really more of just how can we come together and show that, you know, you're a human being, I'm a human being, we're all here trying to do the same thing. We might have slightly different beliefs, but at the end of the day, you know, we care for one another and we can rely on one another. And so that was just something that really touched me yesterday when I saw so many people who weren't from my community coming to that vigil and, speaking and telling us, that we have their support, especially in times like this.
So it's not necessarily that I've ever faced any oppression or any discrimination as an atheist, but living in southern Georgia especially, I used to live in Valdosta, Georgia before coming to Athens. It was a pretty religious town, mostly Christian. So being an atheist, or really being any other religion in Valdosta, was always kind of awkward. It's not something you ever really talked about, or if you talked about it, like I actually did lose a couple of friends in high school and middle school because of it. And so I always was kind of worried about that coming here to Athens, but it's been always really refreshing, not only for like being an atheist, but really all the religions that you see represented here at UGA, and how everyone kind of works in harmony to do their thing to keep this like a cohesive and peaceful and unified campus for the most part. And I think it's really impressive to see that among such a generation in which we kind of live in a world of turmoil, and like people are always talking and looking at the differences between others before looking at like the similarities. So.
I will say, growing up, because the Baha'i Faith is such a small religion, most people haven't heard of it. And so if they have heard of it somewhere, people automatically assume that we're a sect of Islam, or they assume that we're Muslim, or they assume, I've had people say that we're part of a cult, which is kind of funny, but just like lots of different assumptions. Lots of people who have told me, I'm not gonna get to heaven, or I don't believe in God, or, all these different things. And I've found that at UGA, it's a lot less assuming and a lot more inquiring. And I think that really speaks to our campus, and I think that speaks to the people here, is that I personally have been met with many more questions and inquiries about my beliefs rather than accusations or assumptions. And so I think that's kind of why this place is so cool, is that we have such different beliefs and people and experiences. And yet at the end of the day, I think that we're here to learn about each other. I think there are questions of malintent sometimes, but I think much more often there's just questions of innocent ignorance, where people just have never had the opportunity or the privilege to have learned before, and now we have that privilege and the opportunity to learn about each other. And so my experience on campus is one that's really helped me see that people here are here to learn about each other and to grow as individuals as well as a community.
Okay. If everyone has had a chance to speak, is there anything else that anyone would like to add before we close the panel?
Being a Christian, I'm sure everybody has had a surplus amount of interactions with people of Christianity, and I think a lot of times where Christianity fails is they almost make it out to be, and Marquez really hit it right on. He said he lost some friends because of his religion, and that almost makes it atheism versus Christianity. And that's really not something that I feel like Christianity's here to do. Because as a Christian, we're called to love all people, because no matter how you sin, I'm a sinner too.
Thank you. Yes, Marquez.
And I think a big problem about like any misconceptions that we have about each other's religions just comes from the fact that a lot of the time we are afraid to ask questions that could make the room a little awkward. And I mean, sometimes awkward can be a bad thing, but awkward could also lead to like fun and very open discussions that can kind of get you to new revelations about not only how someone else's belief something works, but also how you can kind of integrate a different mindset into your own kind of belief and mindset system so you can kind of have a happier and more fulfilling life, I guess. So just kind of getting over the nerves and like the awkwardness to ask a question if you don't know something, or if you want to know something or something more about someone's religion or really anything about them, I think would just make people a lot more connected.
I cannot overstate enough how grateful I am to have been born in the United States and to live in a country where I'm able to practice my faith freely. That is not the case in many other parts of the world, especially in the Middle East. So right now in Iran, which was where the Baha'i Faith was founded, there is severe, severe persecution going on by the Iranian government to Baha'is as a minority religion. There's an infant to cradle incarceration that's going on there, which means that women who are Baha'is who are pregnant will be put into prison, and their babies will be born in prison and stay there for the rest of their lives, or 20 years or 30 years, because they come from a Baha'i family. So in Iran, the Iranian government, it's a theocracy there, and so there are constant smear campaigns against Baha'is. Graves are desecrated. Baha'is, if they are seen practicing, they are either executed or they are put into prison. I've had 2 uncles that were put in prison for practicing their faith years ago in Iran. But something that I think is kind of the saddest thing of it all is the fact that Baha'is are not allowed to go to college, and they're not allowed to get a higher education. And to me, I think that's one of the biggest travesties because of the emphasis in the Baha'i faith on the importance of education and on the importance of having that higher mode of learning. So right now what happens is if you're a Baha'i and you apply to college, either they'll flat out deny you, or now kind of what they're doing is they'll accept you into college for maybe a semester or a year to say that they accept Baha'is, and then they'll expel you the next year. So that's kind of what's going on now. And some efforts that we actually have globally to work with this is there's this program called the Baha'i Institute of Higher Education, BIHE. And this is basically where professors all over the world get on Skype, and they do online lessons with Baha'is who are not able to go to college in Iran. And the Baha'is can actually get diplomas through this program. Of course, if you're caught, you'll probably get killed or go to jail, which has happened a few times. But UGA is actually a school that accepts a BIHE diploma as valid for Baha'is to come here to grad school. So I think that's something that's really cool. But I guess just one last thing that I personally would like to part with is this idea that we are very blessed, I think, at UGA and kind of in America as a whole. But there is stuff that we can do to help oppress religious minorities in other countries like Iran through BIHE or through calling your representatives and calling House members to work on bills to kind of help the Baha'is in Iran. So that's the last thing I'll leave with, but yeah, we're definitely really lucky to be here.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share their experience or have anything else to add?
So just a couple things. Sikhs are an ethno-religious group. We have our own culture, and it's separate from the culture of the majority people in our native homeland. We're also a minority from our native homeland. And so that's that. 99% of the people wearing turbans in America are Sikhs. So speaking of turbans, if you ever see a Sikh on the public and you need help with something, it might be a flat tire or someone stole your purse or something. You see a Sikh, you'd be like, Sikh, help me, because that's our job. And
Just call them Sikh.
yeah, just be like, hey, Sikh, help me. Because we're supposed to help the community, and we're supposed to put the needs of others before our own, and it's an honor for us to serve others.
Okay, well, if there's no other comments from the panelists, I'd like to thank all of them for their insightful experiences. Thank you.